after we hadn't spoken for years. My golden brother sought part of my company. My mother supported him by stating that he is 10 times superior to me. I thus gave them a lesson that they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. After all that has transpired over the last several months, I feel compelled to write this account, even though I never imagined doing so. I sin. Male. A 35-year-old software engineer. I started a profitable cybersecurity consulting business from the bottom up. Today, my firm makes over $12 million a year and has 47 employees. Not bad for someone who began learning to code 15 years ago in his parents' basement. However, my accomplishment isn't the main focus of this article. When my toxic family saw that I had really succeeded, they attempted to ruin everything I had fought so hard to achieve. Let me give you some background first. Jake, my younger brother, is 32 years old. As a youngster, Jake was seen by our parents, especially our mothers, as the ideal child who could do no wrong. Jake was the gregarious, athletic kid who played varsity football and had ladies calling the home all the time, while I was the quiet, industrious boy who spent his time studying programming languages and creating computers. Our parents were quite clear about who they liked most, especially Mom. They purchased a brand new Mustang for Jake when he required a vehicle for his 16th birthday. They gave me the keys to our ancient Honda Civic, which was 8 years old and had 150,000 miles on it. When I turned 16 6 months later, they would give Jake petrol money and encourage him to enjoy himself when he wanted to attend parties. I had to utilize the money I earned from my part-time work at the neighborhood computer repair shop to pay for computer equipment or programming camps. Mom would just grin and remark that Jake needed more help, since he's more sociable. But the favoritism was so obvious that even members of the extended family would comment on it. When Mom's partiality was really clear, I could sometimes see Dad feeling uncomfortable, but he generally kept silent during these discussions. Thanks to his charisma and athletic prowess, Jake breezed through high school and was accepted on a partial football scholarship to a respectable state university. I was awarded a full academic scholarship at MIT in the meanwhile. You would think that our parents would have been pleased, but instead, my mom worried about Jake's feelings about his sibling attending a better school. In fact, she advised me to think about remaining nearer home so Jake wouldn't feel overshadowed. I think I realized during that chat that no matter what I did, I would never be the favored son. It felt liberated to go to college. For the first time in my life, I wasn't negatively compared to my brother, but rather appreciated for my technical proficiency and intellect. I excelled at MIT, earning a degree in computer science and a position at a prestigious software business in Boston right after I graduated. Jake, on the other hand, lost his scholarship, blew up his knee in his junior year, and barely made it out with a business degree that he never really utilized. Mom would spend hours discussing Jake's potential and how he was figuring things out whenever I returned home for the holidays. But she seldom ever inquired about my profession. When I was 28, that was the last straw. I just became engaged to Sarah, a talented data scientist I met at work, and I had plans to launch my own business. Mom didn't offer congrats or inquire about my intentions when I told the family about this. The question was whether, given Jake's business degree, I had thought about making him a partner. I graciously rejected, emphasizing that, particularly in the crucial early phases, I required someone with technical skill rather than basic commercial understanding. At the time, Jake dismissed it with a chuckle, claiming he had no interest in nerdy things. However, I could tell Mom's eyes were disappointed when Mom insisted that we should encourage each other's success as brothers. That Christmas meal descended into chaos. She accused me of being selfish and envious of Jake's social abilities when I eventually lost my temper and pointed out that he had never once acknowledged my accomplishments or even showed interest in what I did for a living. Throughout the whole dispute, Jake smirked and kept throwing gasoline to the fire by saying things like, "Mom, you know how he's always been with money. Alternatively, other individuals just don't care about their families. My last family get-together was the one. After that, I stopped interacting with others, only answering direct inquiries and chatting in family groups. And I stopped taking vacations. I could see Dad wanted to close the distance when he called to check in, but he would never challenge Mom's favoritism. When I started Secure Flow Solutions 2 years later, Sarah and I relocated to Austin. The company expanded quickly. It seems that there is a significant need for cybersecurity consulting, particularly from businesses who have experienced a hack and want assistance in repairing their systems and averting such incidents in the future. I had 15 staff in 3 years. I was earning 8 figures a year in only 5 years. I took care to avoid sharing my accomplishment on social media. And in our few chats, I never brought up money. 3 years ago, Dad died after a heart attack. That was heartbreaking. But it also meant there was even less motivation to stay in touch with Jake and Mom. It was an uncomfortable funeral. Jake had changed in the almost 4 years since I last saw him in person. The arrogant athlete I recalled was no more. He had a patchy beard, a soft around-the-middle appearance. And he was often saying how fortunate I was to run such a profitable firm, conveniently ignoring the fact that she hadn't talked to me in years. Mom spent the whole reception expressing her pride in both of her boys. I anticipated that we would resume our little contact pattern after the burial. I was mistaken. My mother unexpectedly phoned me around 6 months later. This was not like the norm. She usually only phoned on important holidays or on my birthday. And even then, the calls were halting and short. "I've been looking through your father's papers, honey," she said. "Additionally, I believe you should be aware of what I discovered." She said that her father had written in a notebook about his aspirations for his son's future. She said he had written explicitly that he hoped Jake and I would someday collaborate, bringing together Jake's business sense and my technological expertise. According to her, Dad had always envisioned his sons working together to construct something. This beat my skepticism. I felt bad about our tense relationship and pondered if Dad had really hoped that we would work things out. I promised Mom that I would give it some thought. But I made new commitments. For the first time in years. Jake gave me a straight call 2 weeks later. He used a phrase of affection that he had never used when we were children. Hey, brother. I learned about Dad's notebook from Mom. After learning about Dad's wishes, Jake, who had been working in sales since college but had never found his calling, said, "I've been thinking a lot about what he wanted for us. Maybe we were meant to work together. Maybe he could help take my business to the next level." I felt compelled to at least listen to him, even though my gut told me that this was a bad idea. We planned to meet for lunch the following week, when he would be in Austin visiting friends, which should have been my first warning sign. Jake didn't come alone, though he brought his girlfriend, Melissa, who looked like she was straight out of a fashion magazine. "This is Melissa," Jake began proudly. "And she's been helping me research your company and develop some ideas for how we could work together." She was probably in her mid-20s, with long blonde hair, flawless makeup, and the type of curves that made every male in the restaurant take a second look. "Jake told me so much about you. David, I'm so impressed by what you've built. I have a background in marketing and business development, so I understand how challenging it must have been to grow a technical services company." Melissa gave me a perfectly white smile and held out her manicured hand. I was suspicious right away because Jake had dated cheerleaders and party girls in high school and college. Not exactly the kind to research cybersecurity companies. With his business degree and people skills, Jake said he could help me scale the company nationally, possibly even internationally. "Think about it, David," he said, leaning forward earnestly. As he presented his vision for our partnership over lunch, he wanted to join as COO, handling all business development, client relationships, and company expansion. Melissa nodded enthusiastically. Jake has such natural charisma. I bet your clients would love working with him. You're brilliant at the technical stuff. But you've always been more comfortable behind a computer than in a boardroom. I could handle all the client-facing work, the networking, the big picture strategy, and just think of how much more you could concentrate on innovation if you weren't burdened with all the business-related details. I listened courteously, but I didn't say anything. Jake appeared to take my quiet as interest because by the conclusion of lunch, he was discussing precise percentages. After all, Dad always said we were equals. And you'll need someone with real business experience if you want to compete with the big consulting firms. I almost choked on my coffee when he said, I thought a 50-over-50 partnership would be fair. Jake, I said carefully, I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself. She had never worked a day in cybersecurity and hadn't been involved in starting the company from nothing. We're just excited about the possibilities. Why don't we all get together again soon? Maybe I could see your office. I'd love to understand more about what you do. His face darkened a little. But Melissa immediately jumped in with a brilliant smile. A certain something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. After they left, I sat in my car for 10 minutes trying to process what had happened. Jake had gone from hardly talking to me for years to demanding half of my company based on some alleged journal entry from Dad that I had never seen. There was an undertone in her voice that suggested she wanted to understand more than just my business. There was something strange about this Melissa woman. So I did what I do best, which is research. And that night, I began looking into Jake's recent past. I discovered through social media stalking that he had been out of work for the last 8 months after being fired from a car dealership for poor performance. As I dug deeper, I discovered that Melissa's background in marketing and business development was primarily focused on working for multi-level marketing schemes and consulting for small businesses that had all failed within a year of hiring her. His LinkedIn profile revealed a pattern of short-term jobs, mostly in sales, with gaps between positions getting longer over time. Melissa's Instagram profile showed the lifestyle of someone with money, including expensive clothes, fancy restaurants, and exotic vacations. But what was most telling was that, despite only having been dating for 4 months, Melissa's recent posts were all set up to make it appear as though they had been together for much longer. She even shared old pictures of herself with other men. But she cropped them out and wrote captions about my love that gave the impression that she and Jake had a lengthy history together. This was beginning to smell like a scam. So I phoned my lawyer, Mike Chen, who had originally assisted me in establishing the business, described the issue, and asked him to check my corporate paperwork to ensure Jake had no rightful claim to ownership. Mike assured me, there's no way Jake has any legal claim to your company unless you signed something or your father had some kind of ownership stake that I'm not aware of. But I would be cautious about any new contracts or agreements. And perhaps we should consider tightening up your corporate structure. In the meantime, Jake began calling me every few days, becoming increasingly insistent about continuing our partnership. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later when Melissa texted me directly, saying, Hey David, I was wondering if you wanted to get coffee sometime. Just the two of us. I feel like we didn't really get to connect during lunch, and I have some ideas that might interest you. He would send me articles about brother business teams that were successful and would keep bringing up Dad's alleged wishes. We met in a hip coffee shop in downtown Austin, and Melissa was obviously dressed to impress a low-cut shirt, short skirt, and heels that made her legs seem to go on forever. The winky emoji made her intentions quite obvious. So, I decided to go along with it and discover what she was truly after. Jake told me so much about your relationship growing up, she added, moving closer. And he feels terrible that you two grew apart. She spent the first 20 minutes asking specific questions about my company, my customers, my income, and my goals for development. He really admires you. since Jake had treated me like a bothersome afterthought during our whole upbringing. You know, this was new to me. Since you two had lunch, he has been studying cybersecurity nonstop, she added, and he's thrilled about the prospect of collaborating. I believe he views it as an opportunity to finally have the type of connection he's always desired with you. I made non-committal responses while she kept probing for more information about my business operations, my biggest clients, my profit margins. It was clear she was fishing for intelligence, not trying to build a relationship. Then she made her move. David, can I be honest with you? Maybe Jake is undervaluing himself, she replied, extending her hand across the table to clasp my hand. Her hand lingered on mine, and she gave me a look that was definitely not about business development. I think you've built something amazing, but there's so much untapped potential. Someone with the right connections could help you expand in ways you've never imagined. She purred. Perhaps we should get together sometime when we can really talk in it. She was attempting to woo me, probably to acquire inside knowledge to aid Jake in whatever scam they were doing. So I acted stupid and smiled. That's intriguing. Melissa, I believe you and I could do amazing things together without Jake around. For the next hour, she fed me a line about government contracts she could help me land, international expansion opportunities, and investors she supposedly knew. None of it was specific enough to be true, but it was all meant to give me the impression that she was the key to growing my business. What kind of connections are you thinking about? She continued, using lame and frustrating reasons to touch my arm. Lean in close, or make suggestive remarks about how we might explore possibilities together while she was talking. When we said our goodbyes, she gave me an overly lengthy embrace and said, I hope we can do this again soon. I believe we may benefit much from one another. I had a feeling I would need proof of whatever they were planning. So that night I installed a covert camera system in my home office and began recording every conversation I had with Jake or Melissa. Sure enough, Jake called the following day, more aggressive than ever. I've been patient, but I need to know where we stand, he said. After a pause, Melissa said, Well, Mom has it and she's not comfortable sharing it right now. It's too emotional for her. But she told you what it said. Melissa believes you're interested in moving forward, and I don't want to waste any more time. I need to know if you're serious about honoring Dad's wishes. What exactly did Dad write in this journal? I asked. I'd like to see it before making any major decisions. Jake's tone changed to barely controlled anger. I can't make a business decision based on secondhand information about a document I've never seen. Are you calling Mum a liar? Are you saying she's making this up? I'm saying I'd like to see evidence before giving away half of the company I built from scratch. Giving away, he exploded. I hung up on him. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised because you've always been selfish when it comes to family. This isn't giving anything away. It's honoring our father's memory and finally working together like a real family. 2 days later, Mom called and sobbed. David, honey, Jake is so hurt. I'm not fighting with anyone. Mom, I just want to see this journal entry before I make any business decisions. I can't show it to you right now. It's too painful. He just wants to be close to his brother. Why are you being so stubborn about this? Your father would be devastated to see you two fighting. If your father truly wanted us to work together, why didn't he ever mention it to me when he was alive? I asked. Mom's tear deepening. But I assure you, David, your father wanted his boys to work together. He was so proud of both of you. This was rich, considering Dad had hardly known what I did for a living, and had never once visited my office or inquired about my business. It wasn't about Dad's wishes or bringing the family together. It was about Mom wanting me to take care of her golden child, now that Jake had shown himself incapable of providing for himself. He didn't want to put any pressure on you because he knew you needed to find your own way first. But now that you're successful, it's time to help your brother. That weekend, Melissa texted me again, suggesting we go out for drinks. I agreed. You're curious to see how far she would push things. And she arrived at the fancy bar wearing a dress that was barely legal. Making sure to sit close enough that her leg pressed against mine, I told Mom I needed time to think about it and hung up. As she leaned in close, her lips almost touching my ear, she said, "David, I'm going to be direct with you." With her hand on my thigh. "After 2 drinks, I think you and I have chemistry. Real chemistry. And I think we could help each other in ways that go beyond business. Jake doesn't need to know about our private consultations." She smiled seductively. "That's interesting. Melissa, what kind of information are you thinking about?" I almost laughed at how obvious she was being. But instead, I decided to test something. I could give you information that would help you make the right decisions about the partnership, and you could help me understand how a really successful man operates. However, if we had our own arrangement, I could make sure you stay ahead of whatever he's planning. Now we were moving forward. "What lawyers? I probably shouldn't say," she said coyly, running a finger down my arm. "I know Jake has been discussing his rights to the company with some lawyers, and he seems to believe he might have stronger legal grounds than you realize." I left her at the bar looking frustrated. But maybe if we went somewhere more private, I could tell you more. The following morning, I hired a private investigator, Tom Rodriguez, who specialized in financial fraud cases, and gave him all the information I had on Jake and Melissa. Asking him to look further, I excused myself by saying that I had an early morning meeting, even worse than I had anticipated. Tom learned that Melissa's true name was Miranda Walsh, and that she had a history of selecting wealthy targets, researching their family dynamics, and then posing as someone who could assist in manipulating family relationships for financial gain. Melissa had a history of targeting successful men in various scams. The most damning evidence Tom discovered was text messages between Jake and Melissa. Jake, on the other hand, had been contacting lawyers, but not regarding valid ownership claims, in an attempt to find lawyers who would assist him in bringing nuisance lawsuits against my business, in the hopes of pressuring me into a settlement rather than enduring drawn-out legal disputes. They had been plotting this fraud for months. Ever since Jake had learnt via common connections how popular my firm had grown. And he had contacts in the mobile phone sector who could retrieve erased texts for legal inquiries, revealing their whole scheme. The journal story was entirely made up, but Melissa had studied my business, my personal life, and my family dynamics, and they had coached each other on how to approach me. Melissa being the supportive girlfriend who was also ready to step in if seduction proved more effective than family pressure. The texts actually showed them laughing about how easily they could use my father's memory to manipulate me. And they had a multi-pronged plan. Melissa would gather information through seduction. Jake would use family guilt to put pressure on me. And if I agreed to any sort of partnership, and they would use that foothold to gradually take over more of the business. The most infuriating part was a message from Jake to Melissa that stated, "David's always been a pushover when it comes to family. If I didn't agree, Jake would sue me for harassment and discrimination, saying I was denying him opportunities because of family bias. In an attempt to force a settlement that would give him money even without ownership, he's been conditioned by his mother to feel bad about everything." I spent the next 2 weeks carefully preparing my response because reading those messages made my blood boil. They believed I was some sort of guilty, weak pushover, who they could manipulate with family pressure and fake tears. They were going to realize how wrong they were. I did something that would have been unimaginable a month ago. First, by having Mike Chen draft strict cease and desist letters to Jake and Melissa, clearly prohibiting them from claiming any ownership in my business and warning them that any attempt to meddle in my business dealings would be met with legal action. I made the decision to go nuclear on my own family, and I put together all the information Tom had gathered: text messages, background checks, bank documents demonstrating Melissa's history of scams and Jake's unemployment into a thorough dossier. We should be working together. Why don't you and Melissa come to my office tomorrow afternoon? I'll show you around. We can discuss terms and maybe we can make this partnership official. I called Jake on a Thursday night and informed him that I had made my decision regarding the partnership. Jake was thrilled. David, you won't regret this. We're going to create something amazing together. This is what Dad would have wanted. I planned the meeting for Friday at 300 p.m. Knowing that the majority of my staff would still be in the office to see what transpired, Jake and Melissa showed up Friday afternoon, dressed as if they were already executives of my business. Melissa was wearing a power dress that somehow managed to reveal enough cleavage to be unsuitable for a business meeting. And Jake was wearing an expensive suit that he probably couldn't afford. I invited them into my office, where I had set up a conference table with water bottles, legal pads, and folders, all the necessary items for a serious business meeting. I said, I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're discussing here before we get started. Jake nodded enthusiastically. Undoubtedly. I said, I think we start with a 50/50 partnership as we discussed, and then we can talk about expansion plans, new markets, and maybe bringing Melissa on as our marketing director. Melissa nodded and smiled. I have a lot of ideas for growing the business. I opened one of the folders on the table and said, I think we could double your revenue within the first year. That sounds ambitious. But before we move forward, I need to address a few concerns. I slid a copy of the private investigator's report, a background check I had completed as part of my due diligence, across the table to Jake. The first page, which revealed Melissa's true identity and a synopsis of her fraud past, made Jake's face go white. What the hell is this? It's the truth about your girlfriend and your little scheme to scam me. I responded coolly in response to his demand. Did you really think I wouldn't look into it before losing half of my business? Melissa made an effort to remain calm. I opened another folder and took out copies of their text messages. And I interrupted. David, I don't know what you think you found, but I know your real name is Miranda Walsh. I know you've been involved in at least 4 similar scams targeting wealthy men. And I know you've been coaching Jake on how to manipulate me using our family relationships. Jake's face had become scarlet. You had our phones hacked. That's against the law. No. Jake. It's not. I also know that Dad has never written anything about wanting us to collaborate, since this whole scenario is something you two made up. The best part is that this was acquired through a legitimate legal investigation. I opened a third folder and took out copies of his correspondence with different lawyers. I am aware that you have been looking for lawyers to assist you in bringing nuisance lawsuits against my business. And I am aware that your goal was to either coerce me into giving you ownership or compel me to settle through pointless legal action. Melissa and Jake both looked like trapped animals by this point. And Jake got up suddenly. You know what? David, I don't need your charity. I was trying to help you out of family loyalty. But clearly, you don't give a damn about family. Side down. Jake, I said firmly. We're not done. He hesitated for a moment about my tone. I've taken certain safeguards because, you see, I do care about my family, and I care about protecting my company and myself from family members who believe they can con me. I opened the last folder and took out copies of the stop and desist letters Mike had sent. Melissa found her voice. You can't prove we did anything illegal. Maybe not criminal fraud. I agreed. These are legal notices formally warning both of you to stop making any claims about ownership in my company and to stop any attempts to interfere with my business. If you violate these terms, I will sue you for harassment, attempted fraud, and business interference. However, I can demonstrate that you have been using a false identity and have a history of similar scams, as well as that you have attempted extortion, harassment, and conspiracy to interfere with my business relationships. I leaned back in my chair and said, Here's what's going to happen. You both are going to sign acknowledgments that you have no claim to any ownership in my company. Jake's mouth dropped. I'm not telling Mom anything. She believes in us working together. Oh. But you are, I repeated, grinning for the first time since they had arrived. You're going to agree to have no further contact with me. My employees. Or my business partners. I pulled out my phone and showed them the draft email I prepared with about 30 family members in the recipient list. Because if you don't, I'm going to send copies of this entire investigation to every member of our extended family, along with a detailed explanation of how you tried to defraud your own brother using Dad's memory. Melissa looked like she was going to get sick. You wouldn't actually try me, I said flatly. I built this company from nothing, while dealing with a family that never supported me. I'm also going to post it on social media and tag everyone we went to high school with, because I think they'd be very interested in learning what Jake Morrison has been up to lately. You chose the wrong person. Jake was looking at the email on my phone, presumably adding up the number of people who would see it and how embarrassing it would be. What do you want? He said softly. I want you to sign these agreements. I stood up and walked around the table to face them directly. And I want you both to understand that if you ever try anything like this again, if you ever mention my name to a lawyer, if you ever claim any connection to my business, if you ever come anywhere near my employees or my office, I will use every resource I have to ruin your lives, and I will sue you into bankruptcy. Leave my office and never get in touch with me again, unless someone is dying. I want you to tell Mom that you lied about. There was a long pause before Jake reached for the pen. This is really up, David, he muttered as he signed the papers. Everyone you know knows exactly what kind of people you are. And I will use every contact I have in the business world to make sure neither of you can ever find decent employment again. No. Jake, I said. What's going on is that you're attempting to steal from your own brother and are doing it by exploiting the memories of your deceased father. Bringing a scammer into our family to assist you in committing fraud is what's up. The idea that you might control me in the same manner that my mother did when we were children is what's up. Jake, I want you to call Mom right now and tell her the truth. I'm not. You're going to call her, put it on speaker and explain that you made up the journal story because you wanted money from me. Melissa signed next, her hand trembling a little. If you don't, that email is sent to the family in an hour. With a defeated slouch, Jake took out his phone and called his mother. Hello. Mom. He began when she answered. I'm here with David. And I need to tell you something. Oh. That's great. Are you guys completing the collaboration? Jake's eyes were filled with hate as he gazed at me. No. Mother. A collaboration is not going to exist. I must admit that the tale I told you regarding Dad's diary was all made up. A lengthy pause ensued. What are you saying, after all? Dad never expressed a desire for us to collaborate. I believed I might persuade David to give me a share of his business. So I made it up. Over the phone, I could hear Mom take a quick inhale. What are you saying? Jake, I'm stating that since I'm broke and believed that this would solve my issues, I lied to both you and David. I apologize. Mom, I understand that this is disappointing. Before Mom spoke again, there was a pause of over 30 seconds. Her voice was hardly audible. Morrison. Jacob. How did you accomplish this? How could you make such a false statement regarding your father's memory? Jake seemed really embarrassed for the first time since I'd met him. I apologize. Mom, you thought you could steal from your brother and drag me into it, she said, her voice becoming louder. And I thought, Desperate. Mom, it wasn't like that. You believed you could use me to coerce him into giving you something you didn't deserve. She said, it was exactly like that. May God. Jake! What has happened to you? Jake asked me, as he glanced at me once again, perhaps expecting me to step in. But I just gave him an expressionless gaze. Mom went on to say, I'm disappointed in both of us. Your attempt to deceive your brother and your lying have disappointed me. I'm also disappointed in myself for blindly believing you. Are you there? David, Mom. I'm here. I'm very sorry. Honey, I ought to have inquired further. I ought to have known. I didn't pause to consider if this made sense since I was so desperate for you two to be together. Only a little portion of my anger against her began to lessen. We'll discuss later. Mom, I need Jake and his girlfriend out of my office right now. Does Jake have a girlfriend? Mom inquired. Jake gave me a stern look. But I was done keeping him safe. She is an expert at defrauding wealthy guys by playing on their familial ties. Her true name is Miranda Walsh. For months, she and Jake had been preparing this fraud. The phone rang in deafening quiet. At last, Mom's voice was as icy as ice. Jake, you're going home shortly. We will be talking for a very long time. Jake and Melissa packed their belongings and made their way to the door when he hung up Cloden. Jake stopped at the doorway. I stared at him for a long time, reflecting on everything that we had experienced, the years of favoritism, the incessant comparisons, the way he had treated me as a child, and now this ultimate betrayal. David, I know you hate me right now, but we're still brothers. No. Jake, I eventually replied, you're just someone I used to know who happens to share some DNA. He flinched like I'd hit him, but he didn't argue. After they left, I sat in my office for a while, processing everything that had happened. Brothers don't try to steal from each other. Brothers don't lie about their dead father to commit fraud. When my assistant knocked on the door to see how I was doing, she said, I'm proud of you for standing up to them. Apparently, the tension had been evident even through the glass walls. So I called Sarah to explain the situation. Sarah had been suspicious from the beginning and had heard about Jake's initial approach. I know that couldn't have been easy. It wasn't easy. But it was important. I had, for the first time in my life, defended what I had worked so hard to establish and refused to be influenced by family guilt. Over the course of the next several weeks, I learned from Mom that Jake had temporarily returned to live with her while he sought employment. Melissa Miranda apparently vanished right after our altercation, leaving Jake to deal with the fallout on his own. A few days later, Mom called me to apologize once more and to ask if I could forgive Jake. I told her that Jake is 32 years old and not some naive child who made a mistake. But he's your brother. No. Mom, he's your son. And you can have whatever relationship you want with him. But he's no longer my brother. Brothers don't try to destroy each other. I wasn't entirely heartless. But he spent months planning to defraud me, brought a career criminal into our family, and tried to use Dad's memory to steal from me. I had a friend who owns a small marketing company interview Jake after I learned that he was actually looking for work and had enrolled in a community college program to gain some new skills. Jake was hired for an entry-level job that paid only 1/10 of what he had been hoping to steal from me. But it was honest work. As for Mom and me, we're slowly rebuilding our relationship, and she's made a real effort to understand why the favoritism hurts so much. And she's admitted that she contributed to Jake's entitlement issues. I never told Jake that I'd helped him get the interview because I thought he could do it on his own if he was truly trying to change his life. She has expressed her pride in my accomplishments at our monthly lunch date. Story 2. When I discovered I was infertile, my spouse filed for a divorce using pre-made documents. Then, while consoling me, my sister became pregnant with his child. However, he pleaded with me to return when DNA testing revealed he wasn't the father. I never imagined that my life would collapse so thoroughly. And yet, here I am. I must tell myself what occurred so that maybe, just perhaps, I might determine whether or not I made the correct decision. Philip, 30 meters. And I, 30 farads. met in college, fell in love, and were married shortly after graduation. Philip was my partner, my greatest friend, and the guy I believed I would spend my latter years with. We planned to establish a family, travel the globe, and create a life together. Everything seemed ideal until it wasn't. We made the decision to begin trying for a child after 3 years of marriage. Being a mother has always been my dream, and I can't wait to have little children running around our house. We immediately set out to attempt, full of hope. But month after month, nothing materialized. Every negative test was like a kick to the stomach, and I was unable to get rid of the mounting worry. I sensed something wasn't right after trying for 2 years. Philip wasn't really thrilled when I suggested that we visit a doctor. I continued wanting answers, but he kept repeating things like, "These things take time, and let's not worry too much." He eventually caved up, and we both took several exams. I was devastated by the news. My illness made it very difficult for me to conceive naturally. According to the doctor, I had almost little chance of a successful pregnancy. That really got to me. Being a mother had always been my dream, and that dream vanished in an instant. I cried all the way home. How would I inform Philip? Or worse, my mother-in-law, Martha. Of the news, having grandkids had always been Martha's obsession. "When will you give me a grandbaby?" Or, "A house isn't complete without the sound of little feet," were among the things she would remark at every family gathering. I sat Martha and Philip down that evening and told them everything. As I talked, I was trembling and struggling to keep my composure. Martha broke down in tears as soon as I finished explaining. She sobbed loudly and dramatically because her aspirations of being a grandma were shattered. She didn't even inquire about my emotional state. At first, Philip did not respond. He only sat there and gazed at the ground. I assumed he needed time to process, since he was in shock. However, 10 minutes later, he returned with a stack of papers after getting up and leaving the room. Divorce documents. When Philip gave me those documents, I recall being really taken by surprise. How could he have prepared them so fast? I first believed that he could have some generic forms lying around, something he had snatched up in a moment of rage. However, it became more evident to me later on that they were not a hastily made choice. These weren't hurriedly produced forms or blank templates. They were planned, meticulous, and in some cases, even notarized. It didn't take me long to come to the terrible understanding. He had them prepared in advance. This must have been planned by Philip, who was only waiting for an excuse to use them. Reflecting about it is heartbreaking. He was meeting with an attorney while I was worrying about fertility treatments and looking for physicians to offer us a shot at parenting. As soon as things were difficult, he was prepared to end our marriage. Just a way out. No, dialogue. No compromise. I'll never be able to determine how long he had them or what was going through his thoughts as he concealed them. Was this what he had planned for? Was he expecting me to make a mistake so he could go without feeling guilty? I was very affected by the whole affair. I thought we were collaborating to build our future. Rather, I found that he was prepared to quit as soon as things were difficult. I was shocked when he handed me the documents. He didn't even try to apologize or explain. The stillness was broken by Martha. She stated I shouldn't hold Philip back since it's for the best, and he deserves a shot at a genuine family. A true family. My whole world fell apart. I thought I was having trouble breathing. I can't really recall much of what followed. I packed a backpack and headed out somehow. The weeks that followed were a jumble. As I attempted to process what had transpired, our marriage ended abruptly when I moved away. My younger sister Joanne, 28 farads. It was my rock at that time. She was continually checking in on me, giving me meals, and telling me that I deserved more. I believed I could trust her because she said all the right things. Joanne then contacted me with some great news 2 months after the divorce was completed. She was expecting a child. Initially, I was very delighted for her. However, There was a strange, uneasy, and even guilty tone to her voice. After a lengthy silence, she acknowledged that Philip was the father when I inquired who he was. She described how their relationship just developed throughout what she described as a trying period in each of our lives. She said that while they had not prepared for any of it, their bond had developed over time. It seems like they were consoling one another in ways that were inappropriate, while I was battling to keep myself together and sinking in sadness over my infertility. Her comment struck me as if the walls were closing in. What I was hearing was unbelievable. After my divorce, my own sister had always supported me, but she had betrayed me in a manner that I would never be able to forgive. She tried to justify it by claiming that they didn't want to destroy my marriage and that it wasn't meant to upset me. But nothing changed. She concluded by assuring me that they were now in love and would raise the child together. Everything I believed to be true about my sister, my marriage, and my family seemed to have been false. Things worsened. My parents took their side. They advised me to grow up and come to terms with reality. They stated that by not supporting Joanne and Philip's lovely new chapter, I was being self-centered. Naturally, Martha was overjoyed. She referred to Joanne as the daughter she had always desired and offered her a lavish baby shower. I was at my breaking point. They were all blocked by me. Joanne, my parents, Philip, and even Martha. In an effort to start again, I packed up my belongings and relocated to a new city. The first several months were difficult. I struggled to adapt, but therapy was very helpful. I started to get better gradually. I started dating again, made amazing friends, and acquired a new job. I was cordially welcomed into my boyfriend's family, who was a single parent with 2 kids. I felt loved and valued for who I am, not for what I could provide. For the first time, in a long time. Then, after a few months, Philip suddenly got in touch. It began with a text message. He asked if we could meet and said he wanted to discuss. I choose to disregard it. After that, there were phone calls and emails. At last, he arrived at my place of employment. I was not interested in seeing him. He refused to leave when I asked him to. I informed him that I will give him a call when I returned home. So I did. I gave him a call. His child was not Joanne's. Martha forced him to undergo a paternity test after months of thinking he was the father. But the results showed he wasn't happy. In other words, the kid was his, not Philip's. And Joanne had reportedly been seeing someone else. Philip admitted to me that he had made a mistake, and that his mother's pressure and anguish had caused him to become blind. He claimed to have wanted to make amends after realizing he still loved me. He pleaded for another opportunity, claiming that knowing what he had lost prevented him from moving on. Though I didn't say much, I let him speak. I emailed him a photo of me with my partner and his children after he finished, with our arms around one another. We were beaming at the beach. I informed him that I had discovered my true family, one that cherished me for who I was, rather than what I could or could not provide. He became silent. He then attempted to explain that I deserved someone without baggage, and that it was not the same. I just hung up the phone after laughing at him. I'm sitting here now, thinking about everything. Joanne and Philip ruined their lives, and now they have to deal with the fallout. My parents have made an effort to get in touch with me, telling me that family is vital and that I should forgive them, but I don't feel like I owe them anything since I have created a life that I am proud of. I still question if I am being too severe. Ida, for presenting my ex-husband, my new family, in spite of all he had done to me. One update. Hello, everyone. I wanted to send you an update since a few things have transpired in the last 2 weeks. I want to start by thanking everyone for their kindness. Knowing that so many others agreed that whatever had occurred to me was unfair helped a lot. Now, let's move on to the update. I received a call from an unidentified number around 2 weeks ago. I wouldn't normally respond, but I did so since I was awaiting the results of a job interview. Martha was the one. She didn't spare any time in stating that Philip deserved another opportunity and that he was shattered without me. Because good women forgive, she dared to claim that I owed it to him. She then brought up my infertility, suggesting that rather than harboring resentment, it was time for me to face reality and concentrate on being a decent wife. I couldn't contain my laughter. It was simply too comical the way she was pleading. I told her that she really needed to stop trying to play games with me and that there was no way I would ever return to Philip. I just hung up and banned her phone when she began to call me nasty names. It wasn't the end of it. Even if I wish I could say that, next to jump in were my parents. They had been sending me emails and texts about how important family is all the time. My mother is always urging me to forgive Joanne, claiming that life is too short to harbor resentment. In an attempt to sway my opinion, they have even contacted our mutual friends and extended family. Even though I blocked them all, their messages managed to get through. A few days ago was the last straw. Joanne appeared out of nowhere one late night as I was leaving work. She seemed worn out and in a panic. She began pleading with me for assistance before I could respond. She said that she needed her older sister since her life was falling apart. She was apparently having difficulties as a single mother after her baby's biological father departed. She expressed sorrow for everything and a desire to make things right. I remained still while she expressed her emotions. I felt nothing at all. Yet I wanted to yell and weep. Nothing except exhaustion. No sorrow or rage. She continued chatting even after I urged her to stop. She started blaming me, accusing me of being callous for not forgiving her and claiming that I was intentionally causing her pain. A security guy walked over to see how the ruckus was going, since it became so noisy. With tears in her eyes, Joanne hurried out of the parking lot. I remained still. Naturally. My parents were incensed and phoned me the next day after learning about it. They said that I was behaving strangely and destroying the family. They said that since I didn't assist Joanne when she needed it, I was immature and self-centered. Once again, I blocked them. How they have so many different phone numbers is beyond me. I'm just worn out and exhausted. They are wrecking everything that made me joyful again. They've been blocked several times. I've tried all I can, but they won't give up. Therefore, I'm at my breaking point. I may even file a lawsuit if they do it again. The second update. Hi everyone. I'm here with another report. And this time, things have become worse than I ever imagined. I really need your help and support right now since I am at my breaking point. I've been making every effort to prevent communication with my ex, his mother, and my relatives. I've banned them on social media, changed my phone number, and even informed our common friends that I don't want to hear from them again. They continue to find ways to enter my life in spite of everything. My lover has now been pulled into their mess. I'll begin with the first problem. My partner has been receiving strange and unsettling messages on his email and social media accounts for some time now. He first assumed they were trolls playing around or random spam. They began with very innocuous questions, like, "Are you really sure about who you're with?" and "You'll wish you hadn't done this soon." But then things started to become worse. Some of the messages began to include private information about me that only someone from my past would be aware of. The name of my childhood pet, a dog I haven't spoken to in years, was referenced in one email. Another included my childhood home's address. My lover understood then that this was not a random occurrence. In order to avoid upsetting me, as he first kept it from me, but he eventually showed me when the texts began to arrive every day. This was very eerie. It was fairly evident who was sending these messages, Phil or someone close to him, and that they had done extensive research on my life. Everything became much more terrifying just when I thought I could handle it. Phil showed up to my boyfriend's workplace last week. Yes, you read correctly. Somehow, he discovered my boyfriend's workplace, went inside, and demanded to talk to him. My partner thought Phil would want to have a grown-up conversation, so he agreed to meet him in the lobby. Naturally, However, that is not what took place. My boyfriend claims that Phil went on a lengthy, irrational tirade about how I still love him and how my boyfriend is obstructing our alleged beautiful future together. Phil had the gall to say that I would be better off with my partner if he ended our relationship for my own benefit. Bless his heart. My partner remained composed and urged Phil to go. At that point, Phil's attitude took a radical turn. He became very combative, threatening things like, "You have no idea what I can do." He also implied that if my partner didn't make the proper decision, he would make things difficult for him. Fortunately, my partner alerted security right away, and Phil was removed from the premises. I could tell how frightened he was when he informed me about the event as soon as he came home. I was incensed that Phil would go to such lengths, and he did not deserve to be brought into this mess, particularly in his place of employment. For me, this was the last straw. I've been in touch with an attorney, and am now pursuing severe legal action. How Phil discovered my boyfriend's workplace is a mystery to me, but I'm eager to find out. I should record everything, including the emails, social media posts, the incident at my boyfriend's office, and even my family's voicemails and texts, according to my lawyer's advice. In addition, I've reported Phil to the police, and I'm looking into obtaining a restraining order against him. Even while I really hope that this would end things, I am realistic enough to realize that it may not. Phil has shown a readiness to push limits, and it scares me to think of him skulking in the background of my existence. I no longer worry just about myself. For my friends, my partner, and everyone else he could choose to attack, I am concerned. This is made much more difficult by my family's lack of support. Rather than being horrified by Phil's actions, they have strengthened their argument that I am the issue. My mom attempted to shame me by claiming that my inability to forgive Joanne is the reason why my family is disintegrating. And she just wrote me another email with the words, "I need to take responsibility for my actions and stop alienating the people who love me. I can now see that my family will always be the same. It is not my side. They have picked theirs. Even though it's painful, I've come to terms with the fact that I can't be in a relationship with them. Not if I want to keep my sanity and tranquility. I wish I could claim that I'm managing things well. But I'm very worn out. After all, Phil and Joanne put me through. I have worked so hard to restore my life. And now it seems like they are attempting to destroy it all once again. But I wouldn't allow them to prevail." The third update. Hello, everyone. I've returned with a little update. About 2 weeks have passed since my previous post. And while I had thought that things would settle down, and life had other ideas, I'm having a hard time deciding what to do in this issue. And it keeps becoming messier. A common acquaintance of Joanne's and mine called me a few days ago. Joanne has apparently been totally absent for the last week and a half. She hasn't spoken to anybody since leaving my nephew, her kid, with our parents. She did not leave a time frame or an explanation for when or if she intends to return. As far as I can tell, my acquaintance claims that my parents are completely going crazy since they are now unable to care for the infant. They haven't stopped attempting to get in touch with me. You name it, phone calls, emails, texts from friends, etc. They are pleading with me for assistance since they are at a loss for what to do. To be honest, I have no idea. My nephew, in particular, did not want any of this mess. So I feel sorry for them. It pains me to think of him being entangled in such a dysfunctional relationship, even if he is innocent in all of this. However, I don't believe that allowing my parents to return to my life would be beneficial. Where their allegiances lie is rather clear. They have consistently chosen Joanne and Phil above me, even when it meant supporting some really dubious claims. And now that Joanne has vanished, they want me to step in and make things right. It seems like they are only attempting to make me the greater person, while avoiding taking accountability for their support of Joanne's behavior. I am aware of some, after all I've been through. I just don't trust people. Even if they may think I'm being cruel, reintroducing them into my life would just lead to more confusion, manipulation, and guilt. I'm terrified of losing my tranquility again, since I have worked so hard to obtain it. At the same time, my nephew is on my mind constantly. He deserves more than this disaster since he is still a baby. However, I'm not sure how I can assist without being entangled in my family's poisonous dynamics once again. I have made the decision to ignore my parents for the time being. I'm still weighing my alternatives and trying to determine what I can do to help my nephew without endangering myself. Perhaps I could get in touch with child services or figure out how to assist remotely. I really don't know what to do in this situation. I would be very grateful to hear from anybody who has had a similar circumstance or who can provide guidance on how to handle anything similar. I'm under a lot of pressure from this situation, and I just want to act morally for my nephew and myself. The fourth update. Hello, everyone. I've returned with a little update. 2 weeks have passed since my previous article. And regrettably, Joanne is still missing. Sans Joanne disappear. My parents have been attempting to contact me non-stop. As I said in my last report. At last, I gave them a call back. I wanted to establish limits, and I was resolved to never cross them. I made it clear to them throughout the conversation that although I would provide them with financial assistance, it was the extent of my willingness to assist. Just money to make sure the infant gets all he needs. No visits. No emotional support. No handling of family matters. I also said unequivocally that this agreement is contingent upon one thing. They need to quit disturbing my partner and me. No more bringing common friends into the situation. No more emails. No more calls. The financial assistance terminates right away if they violate this requirement even once. They agreed, which surprised me. They will accept everything they can get. In my opinion, since they are now so desperate, we agreed that I would contribute a certain amount each month to help with the baby's expenses. But other than that, I would not be involved, even if it's not flawless. It's the best I can provide without sacrificing boundaries or constraints. I'm attempting to put my own life and the family I've created for myself first right now. I'm able to assist my nephew financially without being drawn back into the terrible environment I left behind. For now, I hope it's sufficient. Version 5. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, this is the last update. Something occurred during the last week that really rocked my world, and I'm really having a hard time processing it all. Phil surprises me, and not in a good way, just when I believe he can take things a step farther. Phil arrived at my residence last week. Not during the day. Not to engage in a rational conversation of any kind, but late at night. Long beyond 11 o'clock. Not that late at night. However, and we weren't expecting anybody, we were thus a bit perplexed. My boyfriend saw Phil seated on the porch when he looked at the doorbell camera. He seemed tired and confused. Before making the decision to appear, he had been aimlessly wandering about. I didn't think at first that it was him, given that he is aware of the restraining order. Why would he visit my home? What's more, how did he find out where I lived? The door was not answered by us. To be honest, I was too shaken to go near it. At the same time, I felt afraid and enraged. What brought him here? What was it he desired? Ever the composed one. My partner recommended that we wait and see if he would go alone. But he didn't. Phil chose to just remain there instead. He didn't yell, knock, or attempt to barge in again. He just stared out into the street while sitting on the porch as if he were supposed to be there. This serene, airy figure hovering just outside our home seemed odd. Fortunately, the children were entirely safe that day, since they were at my boyfriend's parents' place. Phil was simply there, not moving. When we checked at midnight, though he didn't attempt to escape, he would sometimes shift positions or glance at the door. Everyone in the home was terrified, since the whole scene resembled something from a horror film. He also started to draw attention from our neighbors. Some texted us to check in and ask if we needed any assistance or if we were okay. Some even remarked on how strange it was to see a man loitering on our doorstep at this hour. According to a neighbor with children, they were very worried about how things felt. It was evident by 2 a.m. that Phil had no immediate plans to go. We came to the realization that we couldn't ignore this. We weren't safe. And the neighbors, who were now tense, weren't treated fairly. We made the decision to contact the police. Phil was ordered to leave by the authorities when they came. He declined, which shocked me, though I'm not sure why I'm surprised now. He informed them that all he wanted to do was speak with me, and that he would stay put till he had the opportunity. I brought up the restraining order at that point. The police quickly changed their tone and confirmed it on the spot. After that, they wasted no time. They made it plain that he had broken the rules and had to go off the property right now. They took him off the porch when he continued to struggle and warned him that more serious penalties may follow. Although it was a huge relief to see him go at last. I felt apprehensive about the whole incident. It's rather unnerving to think about him waiting for hours on end without moving. I've taken great effort to establish limits and safeguard my legal rights. He was still able to make me feel frightened in my own house. However, my partner and I have been taking additional precautions to make the home more secure ever since the event. We are improving the locks, adding motion-activated lights, and investigating a more sophisticated security system. I don't want to live in constant terror. But I also don't want to undervalue Phil's potential next move. His newfound boldness is what truly bothers me. He understood the implications of showing up at my residence and was completely aware of the restraining order. Yet, he still did it. I find it frightening that he seems to be attempting to demonstrate his independence. Furthermore, I am unable to ignore the impact this is having on my neighbors. They have been really helpful during this whole ordeal. But it is annoying that Phil's behavior is now placing them in a difficult position. According to one neighbor, they were concerned that he may come again, so they kept their children inside the next day. The fact that his actions are making other people afraid just strengthens my resolve to stop them. I am pleased that there was a restraining order. It undoubtedly aided the cops in acting quickly. But I'm also coming to the conclusion that it's not a panacea. It's obvious that Phil doesn't care about legal or other restrictions. And I need to remember that going ahead, my lawyer is working to strengthen the restraining order. And I have filed another police complaint to make sure Phil suffers severe repercussions if he repeats this. We are also investigating further legal options. Positively, the arrangement I made with my parents to provide financial support for my nephew seems to be working for the time being. But as always, Joanne is nowhere to be seen, given all that has transpired over the last several months. I was certain that my partner would quit our relationship, since he has 2 young children, and who would want to subject them to such drama. But I am so thankful that he supported me through it all. The best thing ever is that his children still adore me. For the time being, perhaps things will slow down a little. I'm at my breaking point. In any case, I appreciate all of your kind remarks. It meant a great deal